Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. Today I'm answering a question that popped up in a Facebook group recently, which was what should I eat to improve my gut health? When I saw this question, I idly thought, oh, I can just direct them to my podcast episode. I couldn't believe it. In over 4 years of running this podcast, I haven't done a single episode on that is kind of solely on gut health, which is crazy because gut health is pretty much the foundation of all good health. So the fact that I haven't done an episode that's just about gut health, just seems mad to me. But I think I know why. I was thinking about this. I really think I know why. I think time and time again, whenever I have clients who come to me with gut issues, there's almost always underlying stress and poor sleep going alongside that. And once we sort those two things out, once we kind of really focus in on these and kind of improve them a little bit, gut symptoms often disappear or just get so much reduced that we don't actually have to do a lot of really in-depth work on the gut health. So I think that's why I bang on so much about sleep and stress on the podcast rather than the actual kind of functional gut health stuff, because I do find that once you sort out sleep and stress, a lot of the other stuff goes away. Anyway, I still think an episode on gut health is well overdue. So here it is. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the impact of stress on your gut health, the key things you want to be eating for good gut health, and the foods that you need to avoid. I'm going to start off with what are the typical signs and symptoms of digestive dysfunction. So, when clients start with me, they fill out a comprehensive health questionnaire, including a really detailed section on the digestive system. Common symptoms that come up are things like abdominal bloating, cramping, excessive gas, things like burping and flatulence, reflux, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, or sometimes alternating between the two, nausea, urgency to go to the toilet, those kind of things. We also often have a really in-depth discussion about poo, and I question them on things like color, consistency, regularity, and whether their poos sink or float. A lot of these give clues as to how your body is actually dealing with the food you eat. Remember, your poo is the waste product of everything that you eat. So whatever goes in your mouth, your body's got to deal with it to get all what it needs out of it, and then it's got to get rid of it at the other end. And I always find it really fascinating that everyone has a really different idea about what normal poo looks like and how often it happens, because we rarely discuss it really with anyone else. So when you actually start interrogating it, you realize that everyone is really different in terms of what they think is normal. In general, I think you want to be pooing at least once a day, ideally twice, and it should be a well-formed, smooth, sausage-like shape that sinks at the bottom of the toilet. That's what I'm looking for when I want to kind of find a healthy poo. If your poo has ragged edges, if it's unformed, if you can see the food still in the food, like lots and lots of food in your poo, or poos that float, these are all signs that or potential signs that your digestive system just isn't working as well as it should. And if your digestive system's not working as well as it should, that means you're not absorbing the nutrients in the way that you should be. Your food has to travel a really long way from your mouth to your bum. And it goes through a lot of processes to be broken down so the nutrients can be absorbed and assimilated and the waste products dealt with safely and quickly, but also not so quickly that the nutrients in the food don't get absorbed in time. It's a really delicate balance and it can go wrong in different places. And I think it's really fascinating that when we think about eating food, we think, I'm hungry, my tummy's rumbling, I need to eat something. But we rarely properly stop and slow down and think, but what is my body doing it for? What does it need to get out of the food? Why do I have to eat other than just to satisfy that tummy rumbling? So when it comes to things that can go wrong, for example, if someone sends me a blood test that shows that they have low iron, especially if they are a meat eater, I don't just simply assume that they need to take a supplement. Often they do. If it's very, very low, and uh, you know, it's telling us that the iron levels are low and we need to put them up. But we can't just put in a supplement without really understanding why they're not absorbing iron well, especially if they're meat eaters. If they're not eating enough iron containing food in the first place, and of course I educate them on how to increase their iron intake from food. And we look at taking a supplement for a short period of time. But we really want to be working on what else could be going on digestively that might be blocking iron absorption. You need really good stomach function, digestive function for your iron to be released from your food. So, along as well as these signs and symptoms, your digestive system has a huge impact on other areas in your health as well. So, immune health, reproductive health, and brain health are really key systems that are affected or and can affect your digestive tract. So when these systems get flagged up in my questionnaire, I'll always put it into context with how the digestive system is functioning too. It's really about looking at everything in one big kind of picture way. And even if a client hasn't ticked any digestive system symptoms, if they've ticked all of those other systems, I would always interrogate the digestive system a little bit. And I nearly always find something does come up because there's things that we just don't think are worth discussing because we're so used to it. It's so everyday to us that we don't realize that it's something that is worth discussing. In the long term, poor gut health and digestive dysfunction can potentially precipitate issues such as inflammatory bowel disease, autoimmune conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, and as well conditions that are linked to nutrient deficiency, things like osteoporosis. So, a lot of nutritional therapists, including myself, are trained in the functional medicine approach of the 5R program, which is designed to bring balance back to the digestive system. So, what are these 5Rs? So, there's obviously five of them. So, first, you remove whatever is in excess and causing issues such as excess fat, alcohol, stress, allergens, sensitivities, and any gut bacteria imbalances. You replace what's missing, so things like dietary fiber to improve the transit time and motility of your gut. And also replacing factors that are needed to optimize digestive enzymes and correct stomach acid levels, and also make sure that you're getting the right nutrients in through food and potentially supplements as well to make sure your digestive system is working properly. You want to be repopulating the gut using probiotic and then feeding your gut bacteria with the right food to make sure that you get the right sorts of gut bacteria in there. You want to be repairing the lining of the gut if there's any issues there to make sure that you do have this optimal absorption. Remember, healthy gut lining is going to really affect how well you absorb the nutrients from your food. And then rebalancing. I think this is the most important part, to be honest, the rebalancing of the mental, emotional, and spiritual components that are affecting your gut. And actually, when I first started practicing, the 5R program wasn't called 5R, it was actually called 4R. And then the rebalancing aspect of it came in. And I really, truly believe, from my clients anyway, that this is the most important pillar. Because as I said, once we start rebalancing those stress levels and improving the sleep and looking at relationships and the environment and things like that, that can really calm down a lot of these digestive symptoms. But what is the link between stress and your gut? So, the digestive tract is connected to your central nervous system via nerves that run from your brain to your gut. This is often known as the gut brain axis. In other words, what goes on in your brain affects your gut and vice versa. So, studies show that bloating and GI symptoms correlate with depression, anxiety, and stress. It's a vicious cycle because any digestive systems affect how well you absorb your nutrients, as we know, which affects how well your nervous system is working. But in turn, your nervous system affects how well your digestive system is working. So, as I said, it's a vicious cycle and it goes on and on and on if we don't get it, if we don't look at it, and we don't address it. When we're stressed, our body literally gets the message to shut down its digestive system because it needs to divert energy and nutrients towards dealing with that stress rather than the kind of slightly languid, restful process of digesting. That's why we get things like appetite loss and anxiety poos and butterflies in our stomach and so on when we're going to go on stage and do some kind of big presentation, for example. But many of us are experiencing quite low level, underlying, chronic, ongoing stress every single day, all the time, constantly. And so your body's still getting, no matter what the actual stressor is, however low lying or kind of sudden it is, your body is still getting that information that it is a stressful world out there and it doesn't want to be digesting properly because it's a waste of its time. If it needs to survive, it needs to kind of get out there as fast as they can. So, good digestion is as much about how you eat as what you eat. So, this is why when I start with clients, quite often before I really go into depth about what to eat, we talk about their eating habits, how they eat, where they eat, who they're with, the circumstances that they come to their meals with, especially, I suppose, breakfast and lunch, which tend to be quite rushed and hurried. But taking time to anticipate and enjoy meals using all of the senses is really, really important. Digestion actually starts before you even sit down to eat in what's known as the cephalic phase of digestion. In other words, it happens in your brain. That's what cephalic means, where you see, you smell, maybe even hear the food that you're about to eat. Preparing and cooking food is such a sensory experience, and it's really important for our digestive preparation. Just as much as our kids are much more likely to eat something or to try something that they have cooked themselves, our body also is going to appreciate the food a lot more when it knows what's gone into it and how it's spent all that time preparing, mentally preparing for eating that food. So, the sizzle of bacon, the smell of a barbecue, the sight of a big plate of colorful food, these are all signals to our brain that good things are coming. You know how your mouth fills up with saliva when you smell or see something that you really like? Or if you imagine taking a big bite out of a lemon that, just like that, immediately your mouth fills with saliva, but you're just imagining it, aren't you? You're not even like actually doing that action. That's digestion starting right there. That is a clear link between your brain and your gut, isn't it? And if it's happening in your mouth, then it's going to happen in your stomach too. So if your mouth is preparing for to eat, for digesting, to start that digestive process, then your stomach is going to be doing that too. So if you don't kind of take the time to take in the food with all of your senses, you are robbing your body of the opportunity to get ready because it hasn't had a chance to catch up with what you're about to put in your mouth because you haven't given it a chance to prepare. So, one of the really key strategies I give most of my clients at some point in our time together, but often quite early on, is to practice something called mindful eating. This is where you slow down the eating experience and pay attention to all of the senses. Many of us eat in a rush. We don't sit at tables properly. Often we're kind of scrunched up on the sofa. Sometimes we eat alone or even standing up at the kitchen counter. This all sends a message of stress and rush, like you just don't have the time to be fueling yourself. And given that that is what is keeping your body going, that's not a great sign, not a great message that you're giving your body. Ideally, you want to be chewing your food 30 times before swallowing. We say drink your food, so chew your food as much as you can. So it's like liquid in your mouth. You're almost having to drink it when you swallow it. So if you bear that in mind when you are actually chewing, it can really help slow things down a bit. And then exercise is really important too. We know the benefits of exercise on mental health and stress, of course, but also when your body moves, your gut moves too. So it can really help with transit time and gut motility, we call it. Okay, so I've got my message and my lecture about stress out of the way. I told you I cannot talk about anything without almost always starting with stress because it is such a key part of your route to well-being. So, but now onto what you probably really, really want to know. What should I eat for good gut health? So, on a kind of foundation basic level, an anti-inflammatory diet that is rich in colorful vegetables, lots of variety, dark green leafy vegetables, berries and healthy fats like avocados, olive oil, and oily fish as well, which contains essential omega-3 fats. Remember, inflammation contributes to gut issues. And so when you eat a diet that fights inflammation, you're going to be helping your gut to heal and to just function properly. So, including live probiotic food, in other words, fermented food, foods that have been naturally fermented and kept live. So, sometimes food is pasteurized just to give it a longer shelf life. That's not a probiotic food, that's just a preserved food. So, live yogurt, live kefir, live sauerkraut, these are all examples that are really easy to buy, but they're also really easy to make yourself as well. If you are buying them, please make sure that they are not pasteurized and, if possible, buy them without the added sugar. So if you buy yogurt, try not to buy the flavored ones because they always have added sugar in. You can always flavor them yourselves with your own fruit. Make sure you eat lots of fiber, especially prebiotic food. So prebiotic is the kind of fiber that we actually can't digest ourselves, but are really important for our gut bacteria. It's food for our gut bacteria. So important sources are onions, leeks, garlic, artichokes, Jerusalem artichokes, berries again, and then cooked and cooled potatoes and rice. So when you cook rice and potatoes and you let them to cool down, these starches in them sort of change structure a little bit and turn into what we call resistant starches. These are not digested in the small intestine. They reach the large intestine undigested, but it is fermented by the bacteria. And this produces a short chain fatty acid called butyrate, which is metabolized in the mitochondria as energy. And it's a particularly important energy source for colon cells, your intestine cells. And it's also really important for inflammation pathways and the immune system. So it's a really key source of energy there in your body. Oats, flax seeds, chia seeds, and vegetables are also a good source of different soluble fibers that stimulate your digestive motility. They give your poos a lovely soft consistency, so they're easy to pass out. And again, similar to above, they help to promote the synthesis of butyrate, which, as I mentioned, is a really important energy source for the cells of your intestine. It's actually one of the reasons why overnight oats with added chia and flax seeds is such a great breakfast. And it's something that I eat often in summer and nearly always appears on my client meal plans. Regularly cooking with antimicrobial foods like garlic, cloves, oregano, turmeric, lots of lovely herbs and spices like that, as well as antimicrobial oils like olive oil and coconut oil. These help to keep on top of the less beneficial bacteria. Eating bitter leaves such as chicory, watercress, and rocket can help stimulate stomach acid production. And then also eating zinc-rich foods, things like oysters, beef, crab, pork, chicken. Generally, meat sources are your best place to find zinc-rich food. Zinc is a really important cofactor to produce stomach acid, and also it's really important to have healthy taste buds. We need healthy taste buds to make sure that you actually enjoy the food, so your body knows it wants to come back for more. It's really key. And it's also important for wound healing. So if you do have any gut health, gut issues, gut lining issues that need healing, then zinc is really important for that too. Eggs and liver, superfood for the gut because again they contain zinc, but they also contain the amino acid L-glutamine, which feeds the cells in your gut. And they also contain vitamin A, which is needed for the health of the mucous membranes that line your entire digestive tract. And then bone broths. It's kind of your classic recommendation really for gut health. Really good source of collagen, which is a key protein in the gut lining. And yeah, really important to make sure that you have that healthy gut lining. And then also colorful vegetables, these dark leafy greens and dark berries, again, are a source of vitamin C, which is needed to make collagen in the body itself. So that's a really sort of very fast rundown of what I think are the healthiest things to eat for your gut health. Hopefully you had a notebook to hand to kind of note them down. And then when it comes to what not to eat for your gut, there is a very common mistake that people make. They identify that they might be sensitive to something. So it might be gluten, dairy, eggs, or they might try the low FODMAP diet. Maybe they found it online. They remove these foods entirely, and they often do feel better. But what they don't do, and this is the mistake, is they don't work to repair the gut so that they can then work on reintroducing it. If you don't repair and rebalance the gut, then the list of foods that you are sensitive to might actually grow because you are not dealing with the underlying problem. You might deal with the trigger, so the trigger being the food that you're eating. Take that away, then it's not going to be causing an issue in that sense. But you don't want that list of food to get longer and longer and longer and ultimately mean that you just can't eat very much. And this can also lead to fear around food, being worried that you're going to accidentally eat something that might cause an issue, or limiting your intake more and more and more, and really cause that kind of, I guess, slightly disordered eating pattern of fear around food. And of course, that is a stressor. And that sort of stress will only drive those digestive issues further. Remember the link with stress and gut that we talked about already. So elimination diets definitely have their place because you want to identify what are the problematic foods and take them out for a while you work in the background to heal your gut. And then you need to try and reintroduce them. And it might well be that you can never eat them again. But ideally, when your body gets back to health, when it rebalances itself, you should be able to eat most things. So elimination diets, not for everyone. Definitely not if you already have a eating disorder or anything like that. Definitely not in pregnancy. And they really need to be supervised by a nutrition expert who knows what they're doing when it comes to an elimination diet. Now, I no longer believe that everyone should avoid certain food like gluten and dairy. I used to before I trained as a nutritionist. Things have changed so much since then in terms of my research and my experience. So I very rarely give a blanket ban to my clients. Apart from anything else, when you already rely on cereal for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for dinner, it's really hard to find alternatives in a way that doesn't feel stressful. And remember, stress is a really key part of not making any health issues worse. But one thing I do talk about, or try and talk about as often as possible, is to make sure that you're getting a good variety of grains in the diet rather than only relying on wheat all the time. I don't think everyone needs to go gluten-free, but I think many of us can do with reducing our reliance on it as a staple grain. You can certainly eat a lot less of it at a time with each meal. Another thing that most of my clients need to do and often identify it themselves when they first come to me is to reduce their sugar intake. Not just in added sugars and sweet treats, but in refined carbohydrates too. There's eating a lot of white pasta or white rice and so on. These can cause excessive fermentation in the gut, especially if the gut microbiome is imbalanced already. As I often say, high sugar can drive poor sleep and low energy, leading to cravings, energy slumps, and weight gain. And again, that can be a stressful situation for the body to perceive. And then another really slightly contradictory thing is it's really important to be hydrated, especially for the gut, for your gut health, to make sure that things are moving through properly. You're not going to get constipated. However, it's best not to drink a lot of it at mealtimes, a lot of water at mealtimes. I often find that people drink most of their intake at mealtimes. We sort of gulp it down. And I think it's because we usually forget to drink during any other time of the day. And when we finally sit down for dinner, you suddenly notice that you're very, very thirsty and you just kind of have a big glass. Or you might even have been in that era where you're told to drink a glass of water before eating because then you fill yourself up and then you don't eat so much. But if you flood your stomach with water like that before eating, it can dilute the digestive juices, which means that they don't work as well to break down your food. So you really don't want to be drinking, especially not your main intake of water at meal times. Small sips with your meal is fine, sometimes necessary, depending on what you're eating, if you're eating something quite dry. But otherwise, try and focus drinking your water at other times of day. And in fact, if you feel like you need to have a snack or you have a craving for something, start with drinking a glass of water because often we mistake thirst for hunger. So try having a glass of water and see if that kind of craving or need for a snack is still there. So this was a slightly longer solo episode than usual. I have been trying to keep my solo episodes to less than 15 minutes, but I feel like there was so much to say on this. I didn't even get to the point of mentioning the importance of gut on the immune system. I wanted to, I put it down at the start, but I actually didn't go into it because I knew that would end up making it a very long episode. So maybe I'll do a second part on gut health and the immune system in the future. Gut health has always been the foundations of how we work as nutritional therapists. So I suppose it's no wonder that there's a lot to say about it. As always, though, managing stress, getting better sleep are always going to be the important starting points here, especially as mums. They might feel unrelated. It might be really feel far-fetched to kind of link the two, but it is really important. So thanks once again for listening in to Raising Healthy Mothers. I've loved this episode. I've loved geeking out over the gut with you. I hope you found it useful, and I will see you again next time for another episode of Raising Healthy Mothers.